Welcome to the Trust Factor Radio, bringing you interviews and insights to unlock the power of the subconscious mind to create authority, credibility, and trust. With your host, the Authority Architect and best-selling author, Neil Howe.
Hello and welcome to the show. This is your host, Neil Howe, and today my special guest is Tracey Lawrence. Tracey is an author, speaker, and family coach, and she helps children of aging parents prepare for, cope with, and survive long-term healthcare crises. Tracey is the author of Dementia Sucks, A Caregiver's Journey with Lessons Learned from Post Hill Press. Her groundbreaking book tells the story of her experiences caring for her parents, both of whom succumbed to dementia. Tracey is also the founder of Grand Family Planning, LLC, a company that provides family coaching and services that save families thousands of dollars with their compassionate and expert team approach. Tracey Lawrence, welcome to the show.
Hey, Neil. Thanks for having me.
Well, this is an area that a lot of people are struggling with. There is a lot of dementia, and it is one of these things that, you don't know how big of an issue it is until it hits you. So I'm really looking forward to, getting the insider's look into this and somebody that's been through this to give our listeners as much help as they possibly can. So tell us a little bit about your story, Tracey, and what you've gone through to make you the expert and to write the book about it.
Well, thank you for asking, Neil. I am the child of two parents who succumbed to dementia. I hit the lottery. So my father, who was a very sharp, funny guy, living in Florida, having a wonderful retirement, seemingly in having everything was great. And because I live in northern New Jersey, I didn't see my parents all the time. And I had to believe what I heard on the phone. So when I saw my father in spring of 2003, it was kind of a shock because I got a good look at what he was going through and the kinds of things that he was hiding. And I realized that he was not well and that things were starting to fall apart and that I was going to be called upon to help my parents cope with what they were going through. My mom was very dependent on my father. My father, basically he ran the show. He was the social guy. He was the financial guy. He was kind of my mom's bridge to the world. She was a very shy and insulated person. So my father's personality was extremely important for the both of them. And over the course of a number of weeks, my father's condition got considerably worse because he went for a diagnostic test, which was performed improperly, and he was bleeding internally and didn't realize it. So when that happened, he was hospitalized, and he became the evidence of his dementia became very undeniable. His short-term memory was gone. And he couldn't remember why he was in the hospital. He kept saying, "I'm sick." That was the point for me where I knew we were in for something really terrible and undeniable. So we brought my father to New York for doctor's appointments and evaluation and to see exactly what we were up against. And it turned out that he had a number of cross-complicating illnesses, which made each of the illnesses that he had untreatable. And the worst of them was vascular dementia, which was misdiagnosed by every professional who saw him. I had taken him to a few different neurologists, and they all got it wrong. He was, and it's important to have a diagnosis that's at least in the ballpark, because there are a number of different kinds of dementia, and they have different treatment protocols. So in my father's case, he was misdiagnosed initially with something called Pick's disease, which he did not have. And the neurologist gave him a very powerful antipsychotic called Haldol, which completely incapacitated him. I took him to another doctor who saw that he was on Haldol, and he took him off of the Haldol, and my father's response was immediate. He returned to something resembling his former self. Mm-hmm. So it was a very challenging, difficult time, but it was where I really started getting a very firm grounding in the many moving parts that a family caregiver faces when they're taking on the responsibility of caring for their parents who have been independent.
Well, just listening to that story, it's extremely similar to what, myself and my wife went through with her father. Basically the same dynamic. He was the larger-than-life character that cared for everybody and was the financial, breadwinner for the family. Mm-hmm. And again, with the diagnosis as well. Couldn't figure out exactly what he had. We were just seeing him getting worse and worse. Sure. And the doctors couldn't even diagnose anything that he had. They said there's nothing wrong with him.
Oh, Lord.
So, there's so many people in this position, and I want to get into, really what the family goes through mm-hmm. during this time, because it is very, very trying.
Yes.
What did you go through, and what did you learn from it through this experience?
Well, one of the things I learned was that there were a lot of things. Well, for one thing, that parents generally are masterful at masking when they're sick. They mm-hmm. don't want their children to worry. The other part of it, as their children, we are very happy to be in denial that there's a problem. So, we're kind of complicit in evading the truth of the situation, and so in many cases, there's an opportunity to intervene sooner when perhaps you could get more accomplished. But it's human nature to kind of avoid confronting these things because it's extremely uncomfortable. It's difficult for a child to ask their parents, "Hey, do you guys have wills? What's your financial situation? How much money do you have? What do you want to have happen if you die? What do you want to have happen if you don't die and you get sick and you have dementia?" Having those kinds of conversations are extremely difficult for most families to have, but they're so necessary. And the really important thing, Neil, is that so many families could be better served by having the conversation when the loved ones are still competent, when they're still able to participate, when they're still able to say, "You know what? I know it's a lousy question, but you know what? If I were to develop dementia, this is what I would want to see happen." And and give a really good picture of what their deal breakers are. A lot of us don't go to that degree. That we don't. Well, if I have to be on a breathing tube, I want you to pull the plug. Yeah, well, what are all the other mitigating factors? If you're on a breathing tube and you have a condition that's treatable and it's only temporary, then maybe the breathing tube is a good thing because it could save your life and you could have quality of life after that. But if the breathing tube is something upon which you are going to have to be dependent for the rest of your life, then maybe that's not what you want. So it requires not just a conversation, but a very in-depth conversation. The other thing is that, we have in this country, we have what are called HIPAA laws. And they are designed to protect our privacy, with regard to our health care. But what they also do is they thwart us from enabling loved ones to represent us when we get sick. So, and this is true of couples who are married to each other. A lot of people don't realize this, but you know, a husband and wife can, or a husband and husband, or a wife and wife, whatever it is, are not automatically endowed with the legal authority to speak for each other. And that's a really big misunderstanding, and it can put people in a very difficult position, because if a loved one is sick and they are unable to speak for themselves, the assumption is that, you know, their next of kin, their spouse, would be able to speak for them. But if they don't have a document that says, I hereby grant permission to whoever treats me to speak with my chosen advocate, then, you know, they can have a big problem. So having a conversation with an attorney who understands this world is extremely important. And too many people forego that because they think it's going to be too expensive. And that's where a lot of the problems come in, because we think that anything that we do that involves bringing in a professional is going to be too expensive. And that's wrong. Because if you choose the right professional, then what they save you in time, heartache, and any number of screw-ups that can occur because something was written incorrectly, they're worth their weight in gold. And so it's extremely important for people to get over this idea that hiring a professional is too costly, and that, you know, we live in an era where you can download anything, where you can play a DIY clip on YouTube and figure out how to do it yourself. We got to get over that. Okay? Because, you know, if you want to know how to fix a toilet and you want to watch YouTube and learn how to do that, have at it. But if you want to make sure that your family is protected, then you really want to go to an estate attorney or an elder law attorney or a special needs attorney, depending on what your family situation is.
And those are extremely important things to get figured out, and make sure you have all those legal things in place at least. But what about the actual care that is involved being a family caregiver? What does that involve, and what does that do to the family?
Oh boy. Well, it really depends. But the thing I want people to understand, Neil, is that a lot of times we think that the compassionate and smart thing to do is to take care of our loved one at home, whether it's at their home or our home. Now, in the case of my parents, I brought them to my home initially. Okay. My father's situation was short term. He came to stay with us in the summer of 2003. And it was, I'm sorry, in the that's right, in the summer of 2003. And his condition was such that keeping him at my house with my mom wasn't a good idea, because my father was hallucinating and he was acting out in his sleep, and he would injure my mother while she was sleeping. So, and I didn't have another bed for her, so we made an executive decision to persuade my parents to go to assisted living, so that they could be in an apartment with separate bedrooms, so that my father wouldn't inadvertently hurt my mom, but she could still be with him. I'll also point out that we were very fortunate in that my parents had the resources to be able to do that. Not everyone does. But, you know, every situation is different, and depending on what the situation calls for, there are all different kinds of care or support that you can ask for. The thing is that too many families, number one, they didn't plan for this, so they fall into it. It starts with favors. You know, your parents will ask you, can you help us out with this? Can you help us out with that? And the next thing you know, you're either living at their house or they're living at your house, and their care has become the unpaid position for which you are, that is competing with your time, with your own family, doing your own profession, right, for your own livelihood, and it becomes unmanageable. The other part of it is that once you've committed to becoming that family caregiver, too many people neglect their own health. They don't practice self-care, and they put the needs of the people they're caring for first. What's alarming about this practice is that it kills people. And I'm not saying this to be flip, because I know people who died from reckless caregiving. And there's a very important statistic that people have to hear. 50% of family caregivers of people with dementia die before the person that they're taking care of.
Wow, now, that is very shocking.
It is.
It really is.
But it's the truth. And if it's the spouse that's caring out for that person, that the percentage rises to 63%. So what then happens when that caregiver dies? Well, somebody else has to step up, and sometimes there isn't a somebody else. Or it's a child who has been assuming that the parent is just going to be able to keep taking care of that parent, and they don't know what their medical situation is. They don't know about their doctors. They're in the dark about what the needs are of this remaining parent. So then what do, right? So it's extremely important for people to, number one, know their limitations. Number two, put their own needs first. Because if the caregiver dies, then everybody who relies upon them goes down in flames also. And what very often happens is that, if a caring spouse dies and that person remaining is left alone, they become a ward of the state. Is that acceptable to anybody? Not to me.
No.
So, what have you accomplished? You've killed yourself, and you've put that loved one who you've been trying to take care of in peril. So, it's very important for people to know that, there are resources of which they can avail themselves for support and for help, that there are hired caregivers that you can find either through agencies or certain databases. And you want to make absolutely sure that the people that you contract with are background checked, and that they're the people that you want to have in your home, right? Mm-hmm. And that they're also aware that everything that they do has to be documented. The reason that everything that they do for the patient must be documented is that in many cases, there is a high probability that if the person lives long enough, they're going to need to go on Medicaid. Now, Medicaid is insurance, that long-term care insurance that is provided by the federal government and is overseen by state government. So, and they are the largest long-term care insurer in the world, and they pay for nursing homes and they pay for in-home care. But in order for them to provide those benefits, an application needs to be filed, and the person on whose behalf the benefit is being applied for has to prove that they have a medical and a financial necessity for those benefits. So, and if they have spent down their money, they have to prove that the money was spent down on their care. So having a caregiver take care of those people, they must document what care they've provided, so that when Medicaid looks at the application, they want to see where all the money has gone, right? And a lot of people are, labor under the mistaken idea that, well, I can just give all of my money to my kids and then I can apply for Medicaid. No, you can't do that. Well, you can, but then Medicaid is going to come knocking on your children's door and saying, we know your mom and dad gave you this money. You got to give it to us to pay for their care. So, it's not, there is a protocol, and they must demonstrate that and show where the money went, and that it went primarily for the care and upkeep of the people involved.
Well, this is hitting home with me, because, we're in that exact situation that you talked about. The father-in-law is at home. His wife is trying to take care of him as well as work.
Oh, boy.
Drew the family in to help. And, we've been doing what we can, but, just the financially, she's not able to put him in long-term assisted living,
right.
And she doesn't want to either.
Right.
She refuses to put him in a place. So let's talk about some of the options that are available and what you're able to do to help alleviate some of these for these families.
Sure. So, what I do, Neil, is for people in my geographical area, which is northern New Jersey and the New York metro area, what I will do is I will talk to the family. I will see who's involved, right? Who's the cast of characters who cares about the people involved. And then I'll do an in-depth analysis. I look at what their financial resources are. I look at what their human resources are. And we begin to put together a plan for how we can manage the care of the people involved. Now, if, for instance, a family, the people involved own a home and they're over the age of 62, they can apply for what's called a reverse mortgage. Now, a reverse mortgage is a very misunderstood tool, because years ago, this was a tool that was abused. Okay, and people would just, they take out a reverse mortgage. They would, take all the equity out of their home, and they would do foolish things with the money, or be persuaded to do things by unscrupulous other parties. These days, the reverse mortgages are very heavily regulated, and it takes a lot to be qualified for a reverse mortgage. But if you do qualify, then it can be a very valuable asset, because it gives you the ability to hire people to help out in the home, to renovate the home, to make it more accessible to the people who are living there and being cared for. And you can also use the money to buy into an assisted living facility of some kind. And this is something that very few people understand. The nursing home business is a business. And if you seek out facilities that are appropriate for your loved one, that provide the level of care that you're looking for, and they have a lot of open beds, then you can negotiate with them. And you can say, okay, this is how much money we have. And what we would like to do is place mom or dad here, and we'll pay for the next 6 months, at which time, we'll be applying for Medicaid, and then you will accept Medicaid payments. Every nursing home facility that's classified as a nursing home has to set aside 10% of their beds for Medicaid. So, and that's what a lot of people don't understand. They think of a Medicaid facility as being, this one flew over the cuckoo's nest, right? It's terrible, horrible place with bars on the windows. Like, no. There are all different kinds of facilities, and many of them have Medicaid beds available, but you have to know how to talk to the people who run the facilities, because if you don't, then they'll bully you and they'll tell you, oh, you have to privately pay for 24 months. And this is like a standard line that all these places give to people. You got to privately pay for 24 months, and then we'll help you apply for Medicaid. No. So that's, but it's important to have some kind of financial leverage to be able to gain entry to a place, to a decent place. Then, there are agencies and there are resources available to help you find qualified in-home caregivers that, you can hire. It's important that the place where they're being cared for is appropriate. Like, for instance, if the people involved are not terribly mobile and they're unstable on their feet, you really don't want them in a home that's got 3 stories where they could fall down the stairs, right? So
Right.
maybe it's if they own that kind of home, then it's time to downsize. So you sell the home, use the proceeds to buy a smaller 1-floor home, or buy into an assisted place. And there are a lot of different kinds of assisted living places. There are places called continuing care communities where you can buy in for a price and you come in as independent, but as your needs change over time, then you can add services on so that you can get assistance as you become less able. So there are a lot of options, and as the population ages, there are more and more options being made available.
Well, I think the big thing here is so many people just fall into this situation and they try and figure things out as they go. And oftentimes, if it's aging parents, the spouse isn't going to be searching out the answers. It's going to be left to the children to find out all this information. So having somebody like yourself, Tracey, that knows all this and you can talk to these people is a highly valuable asset. If there's one thing that you could say, the first thing that people should think about to do, what would that be?
Well, I would say before your loved ones get sick, have that difficult conversation with them. And start asking the questions. And by the way, if you don't know what questions to ask, I have a free ebook that I offer through my website. It's called The 8 Topics You Must Discuss. And it talks about, what things you really need to talk about, and also how to approach the conversation. Because for most adult children, it is a very difficult conversation to broach. You're going to get pushback from your parents because they don't want to talk about this stuff. It's scary, and you're pushing on a button that's causing them a great deal of pain and discomfort. So very often they will lash out at you when you attempt to have the conversation. So it's important to know that when they do that, it's normal, but don't use that as an excuse to back off permanently. Back off right then and there, but circle back around later. And I also recommend that people think about individuals in their parents' lives who they respect. If it's a pastor, a rabbi, a golfing buddy, anybody in their life who they have some respect for, who's not their child, I suggest the adult children identify these people and have conversations with them away from their parents, and get those people to understand what your concerns are, and then bring them into the conversation. Ask them to talk to your parent for you, because they will listen to that person a lot more readily than they will listen to their children. And, because no matter how old or accomplished you are, you're always going to be your parent's baby. So right? So, and they also installed all those buttons in you. So when you start making them feel uncomfortable, there's a very high probability that they're going to be mean to you and they're going to push on the old buttons and make you feel lousy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unfortunate because you're trying to do a loving thing for them, but they're feeling so threatened that they can't see it that way at that moment. But there is a way to do it. There's a way to approach it that will yield benefits. And it's important to have the courage and the intestinal fortitude to keep trying, because it's a conversation worth having.
Mm. Well, like I said, there's so many people going through it. I don't know the statistics. I don't know if you know them offhand, but it seems more and more I'm hearing that people's parents are getting dementia.
Yeah, well, in the workforce, there are over 45 million people performing family caregiving. About 16 million of them are providing family caregiving to people with Alzheimer's disease. And there are 5.75 million people who we know of who have Alzheimer's disease. And that's just one type of dementia. I recently learned that 60 different types of dementia have been identified.
So it's very prevalent, and yes. There's a high probability that you're going to be dealing with this in some aspect, because families are big. It might not be your parents, it might be your in-laws, like it is with me, but there is a high probability. So Tracey, if people want to reach out to you to get some resources, to read your book, or just to contact you to have a talk, what is the best way for them to do that?
I welcome them to contact me by email. You can reach me at grandfamilyplanning@gmail.com. You can also go to my website, which is grandfamilyplanning.com. And there are links to resources, and there are contact forms that you can fill out that will come to me, and I will send you whatever documents you're looking for. And I also offer a free consultation by phone. So, and all I ask is that people who decide that they want to have the free consult fill out a form. And this form is actually really cool because it will make you think about things that you didn't know you needed to think about. So, so just filling out the form in and of itself is a really great exercise in getting you to start to understand the complexity of the caregiving situation. And if you are looking for a great resource in the form of a book, my book is called Dementia Sucks, A Caregiver's Journey with Lessons Learned, and it is available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all major all booksellers, because it's part of the Simon & Schuster database. It's published by Post Hill Press, so you can pretty much walk into your favorite bookstore and ask for Dementia Sucks, and they will get it for you.
Excellent. Well, Tracey, this has been very eye-opening. I think this will be a conversation that needs to be heard by many people. So I hope the people listening to it now will reach out to you and get some of those questions answered. But I really appreciate you being on the Trust Factor Radio today.
Well, Neil, thank you so much for having me. And really, folks, I welcome you to contact me. There's a very big problem ahead of us. It's only going to get bigger. So, please reach out. I'm happy to help however I can. And, Neil, best of luck with your in-laws. I know it's a difficult situation to be in, and you can call me too.
All right. Well, I appreciate you, Tracey. And to our listening audience, if you like what you hear, hit that like button and share, and we'll see you next time on the show.
You've been listening to the Trust Factor Radio with Neil Howe. To learn about the resources mentioned in the show and to listen to past episodes, go to thetrustfactorradio.com to get a copy of the book, The Trust Factor. go to thetrustfactorbook.com. If you are ready to act now and build your authority, credibility, and trust, schedule a consultation with Neil at theauthorityarchitect.com.